Hello and welcome to our Sikich Salesforce Spring Update for 2025. Hard to believe we are already at February 5th, 2025. But here we are. And today we just wanted to go through your guide to key updates and release strategy essentials. So to kick it off, I am going to do a quick team introduction. We're going to go through critical updates. We're going to highlight some exciting new features. We're going to do a demo showcase and then have some question and answer time. And feel free to put some question and answers or questions that you may have in the chat. And so when we get to the question and answer portion, we can answer those as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the team. We are joined by our Salesforce director, Mr. Justin Davis, Chris Masonius, who is our account executive. Myself, I'm Courtney Maxwell. I am your client engagement manager for Salesforce. And then we are joined by two of our senior solutions architects and consultants, Mr. Dustin Ridias and Adele Stager-Hughes. We call it the Salesforce Dream Team. Just a little bit about Sikich and Salesforce, just at a glance. We have been a Salesforce partner since 2007. So, 18 years as a Salesforce partner. So we're very, very, very proud of that. We have a global presence, about 1,900 employees. The industries that we are focusing on serving and are dealing a lot with right now are agriculture, manufacturing, wealth management, insurance, and life sciences. As you know, our services include all things Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, Data Cloud, Agentforce, a lot of new and exciting information with AI. And with that, we are going to go into the critical updates, and I'm going to let my teammate take over.
All right, thank you,
Go
Courtney.
ahead, Dustin. Thank you.
So before we get into the new fun stuff, we just want to go over a few updates that'll be coming, some changes that are going to be enforced with the current release and some future releases coming up that could impact you if you don't take preparation. The first of these is ICU locale enforcement. So Salesforce is making some changes on the back end related to ICU formats, and that it's just a standard. It's an international standard for how like numbers and dates, toms are formatted. This really applies to older Salesforce implementations, so orgs before winter of 2020. And if you have any Apex Visualforce pages that are running on version 45 or below. We're now up to version 65, so this is going to be things that were created years and years ago. But this will be an automatic update forced out to your org. If that fails, your admins will receive an email that there's some additional action that needs to take place. But with this update and really any changes that you make to a Salesforce environment, always check these out in a sandbox first, run through your functional tests, your automated tests, make sure that everything's still functioning as expected. The next item we have was originally planned to be implemented in spring of 25, but it's being pushed out to the summer 25 release, so you've got a little bit more time to prepare for this one. And it's related to SSO integrations that use SAML. So if you log into your environments using services like Duo or Okta, it's good to go ahead and start planning and testing those in a sandbox to make sure that this change doesn't impact the way that those communicate and do those login transactions. Salesforce, they say that everything should be fun with this one, but they just want everybody to be aware so that they can test and be prepared just to make sure that things go smoothly. Okay, then the next thing that is coming with summer 25 is API deprecation for their platform APIs. So if you have external services that integrate data to Salesforce, or you use really old versions of tools like Data Loader, you could be impacted by this. The API version 30 was rolled out in spring of 2014. So again, this is, applications and integrations that are 10 years old, would be impacted. And so like always, make sure that you identify those. There's some logging that you can run inside of Salesforce to see if you have any connections being made with these older APIs. And then, test in a sandbox if you identify those and make sure you get ahead of this. All right, this is going to be a big one. So in winter 26, you've got till the end of the year to get prepared for this one, but process builders and workflow rules will no longer be supported by Salesforce. In the system today, if you go to create new process builders or workflow rules, you'll get an error or a warning message that they're being phased out. Salesforce has made a big push to move all of their automations into Flow. Um, so it's really good to start looking at your customizations in your environments to see if you have any active process builders or workflow rules still in use. And we've created a guide, just a helpful way to identify those and start your transition of those into Flow. All right, with that out of the way, we'll start to talk through some of the new features coming with this release. All right, so the first of these is going to be great for your users, and it is multi-column sort in list views and related lists. So, in the current version, current prod version, when your users go out to look at a list view, they can, click, you can see in the background there, some of their columns to sort them ascending, descending. But now with this option enabled, users will be able to go in and set up multiple sorts. So if you think, custom sorts in Excel, similar thing. So you want to sort by the close date first and then by the amount. This empowers your users to be able to do that. One thing to note about this is that the sorting does stay in place. So if your users set up a custom sort, leave the page, refresh the page, when they come back later, this will still be sorted that way. All right, the next one is for our admins out there. The next couple of these are related to user management. So there is a new list view UI that you can enable, and it gives you a more modern experience when you're managing permission sets and roles. So if you're a really role-heavy organization, you do a lot of changes. For roles, it even supports inline editing. So creating list views, filtering, all of those same standard functionalities that you see with your regular accounts, contacts, other object views, you now get those same that same experience when you're inside of these views in the setup menu. Okay, the next one we have resolves a long-standing issue that I've dealt with way too many times, and that's related to password confirmations when you send a password reset. So if your organization has link scanning tools, so when you receive an email, it looks at the link, makes sure everything is secure. Those are notorious for expiring those password links before a user ever has a chance to click it and reset their password. So now with this new feature, when a user clicks that password reset button, they'll be prompted with this new reset password confirmation before that reset link expires. So it's going to cut down on a lot of back and forth and these endless password reset loops. So super excited about this one. All right, the next one we have is a new global permission that's coming out in your profiles and your permission sets, which we should all be using permission sets for object access at this point. So with this new view all fields permission, similar to the way that view all records, modify all records works, when a user has this view all fields permission, they get any any field access for any fields that currently exist on an object or that are created going forward without you having to manage those and grant that access at the field level. So it's great if you've got users that just need broad access to an object. You can use this view all fields and cuts down that on that ongoing maintenance when you're adding fields. All right, and the last of these is related to some extensions of the sharing summaries. So if you missed this in the Winter 25 release, Salesforce has started to implement this sharing summary view. It's now available on users, permission sets, permission set groups, public groups. Super powerful tool for you to be able to go in and see, let's take a permission set as an example, just drill in, see a summary view of everything that permission set is doing without having to drill into the individual objects and fields and click all over the place to see the full scope of permission that that's granting. In this summer 25 release, there are a couple of extensions made on the public group sharing summary so that you can see all of the list views and all of the queues that a user is granted access to when they're a member of that public group. So it's again just a good way to go through and just see the full scope of everything that's impacted by this public group. If you have not checked out those sharing summaries, highly recommend you going out to do that. It is amazing. And you can copy paste those sharing summaries into Excel. They've cleaned up the way that those export out. Super helpful. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Adele to talk through and demo some new features in Flow.
Awesome. Thanks, Dustin. Let me go ahead and share my screen here and we'll get into it. Okay, so this is going to be a little admin heavy demo here. There are a ton of things coming to Flow. So with that, we're going to go over some of the new changes to Flow. The first of which is there is on here, in past releases, they came up with this automation hub. So one of these things is starting with the automation hub. For the most part, we haven't used this much. I mean, Salesforce is trying to push people to use this, but most people just go to setup and then go to your usual flow menu to go ahead and get started with flows. You can hit this new flow button here. Um, to encourage people to start using this automation app instead, which you can always just find using your, if you're an admin, you click the 9 dots at the top, the app launcher, and then just type in automation and it'll pop up here. It's just its own app. So in order to kind of push people to start using this app, they have changed the new button for flows here. So this is a way where you can go ahead and like view flows in a different way. There's a list view. You can create different list views here, do different things on here. You can do like error flows, all flows, that kind of thing. So they're trying to get people to use this automation hub. And in doing that, when we hit new, you can create flows directly from here and it brings you to this updated menu. So I'm just going to keep that on here and then go to this new other tab here. So this is typically how most people create flows currently, where you would just go to setup, go to flows, and then you hit new flow here. When you do that, we have this kind of older view where you can either start from scratch or use a template. In this new view instead, it's giving you a lot more information. This is really, like Dustin said, we're getting rid of workflow rules and process builders. So with that change, there's going to be a lot of new people going to flows, using flows for the first time. So this screen is really to help people who are newer to flow get an understanding of what flows are. So it can start with your different categories. You'll kind of even do recently, frequently used here. So for example, if I go ahead and look at maybe scheduled flows here, it'll go through the different types. It'll show me the templates for it. I can also just remove that and go back here. Hit this back arrow, get back here. So if we do like auto launch flows, it'll go through the different types of auto launch flows. Like we have the no trigger, we can do an async flow. If I go back here, if we do triggered flows, it can go through the different types of triggered flows. So a record triggered flow would be like when a record's updated versus a platform triggered flow is where like a platform event message is received. So it's just kind of give more information from the get-go of flows in general so people can get started easier. So in this case for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and do a screen flow. So these are the different types of screen flows you can do. You can just do a basic screen flow. You can do it for user revisioning. And it also has the different templates in regards to these screen flows. So in this case, I'm going to use this create a case template. and just start from there. So we can have a bunch of screen elements of my flow already created for me. So we can see this flow. The whole purpose of this flow is to go ahead and it is as if someone is calling in and talking to a customer live on the phone. It goes ahead and gets their information, their first and last name. It gets their email address and phone number. And then based off that, tries to find that person. If they can't find it, it'll create that record. So that is kind of what this template is for. So with that, I'm going to kind of show us some other new features that are happening in Flow. So that new landing page is the first one. The next one is going to be on our Get Records. So for those of you familiar with Flow, Get Records is the way you can grab records from the database and pull into your Flow. So in this case, if we're getting someone we're trying to find their first and last name and their email address, we're then going to go ahead and get try and find a contact where their first and last name match, their first and phone number, like all of this information that we just filled out in those screens match. So the new feature here is actually in this how many records to store. This is to make it more like a typical SOQL query, like more like code. So typically you can get only the first record or you can get all records. The update here is that now you can get all records up to a specific limit. So like if you know for sure that you only need to get like the first 10 records, you could go ahead and instead of just doing only the first record, you could do all records up to a specific limit and then go ahead and give your limit on here. So that's kind of how you could do that. And it says the max is from 2 to 2,000 is how you could do actually 20,000 there. So that's super helpful, especially if you know it's going to be a flow where you maybe have you know you have a loop in your flow, and if you get your too many runs through your loop, it's going to fail out anyway. Not having that and getting only the first 100 so that your loop doesn't fail is super helpful. So just to make it a little bit more similar to code, Salesforce is all about clicks, not code. So this kind of thing is already available through like Apex and things like that. So this is just adding that functionality to the flow tool. Perfect. The other thing, a few other features that are coming on here is going to be sending attachments through emails. So there's typically two ways you can send emails through Flow. There is using workflow email alerts, or there's the send email action. Email alerts are favored usually if you have an older, the email alerts were first. So if it's older, you probably do email alerts, but also you can do different like letterheads and things like that when it comes to email alerts. But oftentimes nowadays, the send email action is the preferred way. So I'm just going to add an action here and do send email. And this is the action that Salesforce is kind of pushing people again towards. They're adding to this continually. They've added a ton to this recently. You can already do like email threading on here. So like if you add this, it will go ahead and been able to like have a thing that you can go back and forth on. You can also do email templates on here. This is a newer feature they added on here. You can log these emails directly to the activity component. So if you have an email that is you want to show up in like from a contacts activity, you can go ahead and log an email directly on that. Email sent through email alerts do not automatically log to that email component, so doesn't necessarily show up there. So they're adding a ton of things to this send email option. And the most recent one as part of this release is attachments. So you can actually send attachments in emails or with easy email sending directly through Flow. So that's this attachment ID right here. So when you do that, it wants to have a comma delimited list of attachment IDs, and those attachment IDs can be content IDs or different things as well. So you probably have to do a get records or some sort of other way to get those IDs correctly, or if you just know that it's always going to be the same file, you could get that ID and hard code it in here. But either way, you'd want to pull that attachment ID in here, and that attachment will go ahead and attach directly to the email that you send out directly from Flow. So that is a newer feature that was not available previously. So we find that quite handy on there. I'll go ahead and delete that for now. But yeah, that send email action is getting more and more powerful every time. It's almost every release they're adding things to that send email action. Okay, perfect. So this next one we're going to show is actually ScreenFlow is perfect for this. So it kind of already started here. So in this ScreenFlow, we have these different screens, and they've added right here what is like a stage element path on here. This is kind of to make it more similar to an opportunity stage path where you can the person who's in the screen flow can see how far they have to go here. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and this is my first stage. So I'm going to go ahead and do, this is going to be my contacts details stage. And because this is a template, we already have these stages here. So I'm going to assign that for my first one here. And then this next one, we'll maybe going to do new stage resource. We'll do stage 2. And then we'll make this 2 here, done there. And then I'll come down here where there is another screen. This is going to be the case details. So we'll do case details here, done there. And then maybe we'll do the stage 4 here. We'll do stage resource. So stage 4. And that's going to be 4. Nope, active by default. Hit done there, hit done there. And I'm going to use my little toolbox over here on the side to go through those different stages. So let's get to my screen components here. So here's my stages. I should have probably renamed these. We'll do maybe 1, and then we'll make this order of, Salesforce defaulted these because I used a template. So I'm just going to make it simple, say this is going to be number 1. Then we have 2, we already had on here. This is order number 2. Then we said case details is actually going to be number 3. Change the order in there. And then we have stage 4, which is 4 and 4. So the purpose of that, I've now had all of my screens have a stage. I'm gonna go ahead and save this as create a case demo here and then hit save. And then I'm gonna debug this and we'll kind of see how that like shows up here. So for example, as that saves, I'm gonna hit debug so we can kind of see how this works. When you're doing flows, it's always best to debug them. So this is how you would do that. So I'm going to go ahead and run my flow. So this is what it looks like when we do this. Let's see here. Maybe we get rid of this one here. Stage here. Leave that. Okay, let's go ahead and save that and then run it instead here. Cool. So we can see this here. This is just kind of pulling up here. This is, like I said, this is for a screen flow as if I was on the phone with someone. And you can see I'm on my first stage here. We know that this is the stage. The name here, I see I added that 1 to the name, that 1 confirm customer details. So it kind of shows there. So I'm on stage 1 and I can see that I'm going to have 3 more sets here. So I have my first and last name. So I'm just going to look for first name and then last name on here. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And then, okay, great. Things first, can I have your email address and phone number? So we're just going to say email@email.com. And then I'm just going to do a phone number of 111-222-3333 and then hit next there. This is where it does that get records, where it goes ahead and finds the person. If it can't find that person, it'll go ahead and create it. So that's where like we just did these 2 screens. It tried to find me. It couldn't find me, so it created me. And now we're go ahead and down here to the gets case details. But you can see as we go along here, it's showing what stage we're on. So I was on 2, I was on 1, then I was on 2, and now I'm on 3. And now I can go ahead and create. They're telling me about a problem. They have, I don't know, no Wi-Fi or something. And then I can just keep typing case details on here, and then I go ahead and hit next, and then the screen will go here, and it has all the way to the end. So that's the purpose of the new release here, is that you can add stages to your screen flow. So anytime during the screen flow, your user who's actually going through the screen flow can tell exactly where they are in that succession of that screen flow. So that is the purpose of this new release, this new item here. So you can go ahead and set those. It's just a different component in the screen. So before this stage thing just didn't exist on here. It's super helpful in that regard. So that is that new thing on there. Some other new things on here. Let me actually get rid of this tab here so that I can go back to our list of flows. Let me go to a previous flow here. So this flow has multiple versions. Previously, when you're trying to do multiple versions of a flow and you wanted to see previous versions, you would have to hit this down here and do this view details and versions. Now you can actually see previous versions directly from the flow itself. So when you're in Flow Builder, you can pull here and you can see those different versions. So you can see this currently I'm on version 3, but if I wanted to go see what the difference between version 2 and version 1 are, I could click that and it would take me directly from here. Um, So that is just a different way. Previously, you would have to like click there and then click into here, which can kind of be a pain to do when you're like in the midst of things. You want to see different things. So being able to get it directly from the flow you're on is super helpful. And now that I'm on like version 2, I can still do this drop down and I can get back to the active version as well. So that's super helpful when you're trying to just go back and forth between flows. So I'm quite excited about that change on here. And then there's also some updated keyboard shortcuts. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is if I do Control plus slash or on here, it'll show me all the keyboard shortcuts. So these are all the ones that work in Flow. In particular, they have added undo, redo, and save as changes to this list. Apparently, the rest of these already existed. I was not necessarily aware of any of them except for the zoom in and zoom out, just because I'm not much of a keyboard shortcut person. But it's super helpful now that you can undo and redo directly from your like typical things. I'm on a Windows computer, so it's Control Z, but if you're on an Apple, you can do, I think it's like Command or something for you guys. So it's very similar. So if I go ahead and close this out, let's say I wanted to, let's maybe add an element here, like a new screen. And then we'll just say screen on there and then hit done. So I've added that. If I wanted to go ahead and remove that, I can hit Control Z. It gets rid of that. If I did actually want to do that, I can go back and do Control Y is redo, go back and forth. It also works like as you're typing. So if I wanted to like type a description to this and then I click out and now I do Control Z, it gets rid of my description. So just like typical things, how you would expect like undo, redo to work, now works in Flow. So that's super helpful. Handy in that regard. So go ahead and close this. I'll pull up that full list again. Control plus slash on here. So yeah, you can do different things. So here's the one I just did to actually show the keyboard shortcuts. You can switch focus. Zoom in, zoom out are typical things on here, but then yeah, undo, redo, and then save as is on here as well. So if you wanted to delete, you could just do backspace. So yeah, handy on there in terms of those different keyboard shortcuts. The other big change that's pulling in on here is, let me go ahead and add an assign in here. The search functionality on how this works is a little different. So if I were going to go ahead and update like the case name here to this, when I go ahead and search in here, you typically you'd want to type in like the triggering record or the case record or the get record or things like that. And it would you'd find what you're looking for first and then the field in particular you're looking on. Now I can just kind of start typing and it will try and search the actual fields that you're looking for in that here. So let me actually clear out this. So let's say I wanted to actually update the ID field and maybe that's not one to be a good one here. Let's do like maybe name. Let's do the case. It's a text field on here. We'll just do like the description. And I want to go ahead and pull in ID on here or maybe name. It's hard to see because it's kind of giving out here. So here's an example here. So I start typing in name and it's going to go ahead and directly pull in like the first and last name on here, everywhere the name is at. Typically you might have to go like to the screen first to find those different things. Let's maybe do phone number. It pulls in the phone number template on here. So the search in here just works a little differently than it previously did. Previously, you kind of had to like, if you're looking for something on a screen, you click the screen, then find the field you're looking for, or if you're looking for something in a get records, like my case here, you would do your case lookup and then find your actual thing in that regard. So the search is just a little bit different than it previously was. So it'll just take a little bit to get used to if you're typically creating flows and things like that. Okay, perfect. Let me close out of that, and I'm actually going to go ahead and delete that with backspace here. Delete that. Perfect. So the other thing that is different on here, if I go to this input validation flow that we previously actually Dustin worked on this earlier, it has always been when you have a flow, an element. So this is a text field that is on a flow. They've added this input validate input thing forever ago to these. So that's not the change. The change is when this is actually calculated. So previously, if you needed to do this validate input, so this for one in our example is value 1 is not valid if value 2 is blank, is how this one works. But a lot of these would be like, hey, if it's a phone number, it needs to be in this format. If it's a state, you want to only include these kind of things. So like if this field has something, this field has to have something else. Like those kind of like input validations that you're trying to put in here, you can put directly into your flow. Previously, those were not like calculated until you hit next. And when that doesn't necessarily help you when you're already past the end of the flow, right? You hit next and then it goes ahead and then will recalculate. Sometimes it will then like clear out the information you put in. The change they made is to go ahead when you click out of this field, it will go ahead and calculate that thing. So let me go ahead and run this flow and I'll kind of show you here. So I'm going to go ahead and put a value in here. And let me do this here. Let's see, go back here. We have that the value 1 is valid if the value 2 is not blank here. So then when I go ahead and run this, I'm going to go ahead and put a value 2 is blank, but if I go ahead and do thing in here, not giving me an error anymore. Great, love when that happens. Oh, there it goes. So I had cleared value 2. It calculates it right as it goes. So it gives me that error message. That would not happen in the past. Previously, you would have to hit next or finish to go to that next screen. Then it would validate those rules and then it would come back here. So that's the change, is when those validation rules are the validate input is being calculated. So it's currently being calculated once you click out of it rather than when you go to the next screen. So it should make it a little easier to like catch those, and now you don't have to like worry about those being cleared out before you go on there. So that is like a ton of random and kind of interconnected flow features that are coming. So I think that's super helpful. I mean, they're always doing changes to flows. They're definitely process builders, workflow rules, they're out the door. They're not doing anything with them. Like Dustin said, they're not doing even supporting them past end of this year. So all their improvements and stuff are coming to Flow for their automation tool. And Salesforce is all about clicks, not code. So you should be able to do almost anything, not everything, but almost anything that you want automation wise in Flow rather than having to resort to doing code and Apex and stuff. So that is what I have. I think I'm going to hand it over to Justin to do some Q&A. Do we have any questions, Justin?
Yeah, let me see what we got here. So this first question here is what will happen if older versions of the API are used? Dustin, you want to take that one?
Sure. So with the API deprecation, where those are truly end of life, they will fail. If you make any connections using those older versions, you'll get connection errors, some server errors, things like that. Salesforce has already stopped supporting them. So right now, if you are using older versions of the API and you submit a Salesforce ticket, they won't help you. Similar to what will start to happen with the Flow and Process Builder migration. So first stage of phasing anything out like that, they end of support it. So then, their recommendation is you need to upgrade, you need to convert, and then eventually they, end all the functionality for it. So if you try to use it, you're going to get failures. Kind of a preview of what is likely to come with the workflow rules and process builder there too, is that eventually they may stop working. So always good to get ahead of those issues.
Thanks, Dustin. And speaking of process builders, what needs to be done for the end of life support because they're ending support for process builders. Adele, do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, so with the workflow and process builders, I would say the first step is to take a look. Well, we have that guide too, but look at that guide. The first step is really to take a look at what you have. Because a lot of cases, especially in older orgs, these could be like automations that are not even really helpful and with your use case anymore. If you have like a workflow rule that was sending an email to someone, is that someone still in their same role that they were in previously? Things like that. So take a holistic look at those older automations. Are they still needed? And if they are still needed, Salesforce does have a tool to automatically convert those to make it a little easier. So they'll take from your workflow rules to flow. We'd be happy to help if you have consolidating some of those into other things. So we'd be happy to help do any of that process. But the first step is to look and see what you currently have going for automations and if they're still needed. Because a lot of times if they are older, the use cases are different. It could be an email that's being sent every time, but someone's just deleting it every time they see it, right? Or there could be new automations that need to be created as well, and those need to be created in Flow rather than those older systems. So first step is take a look what you got.
All right. Well, thanks, Adele. And this next one here is about column sorting. So does column sorting impact all users like it does for filters?
It does not. So column sorting is specific to the person that sets them up. Another long-standing frustration around filters is it's too easy if your users have access to edit list views to just click that filter button and expect it to work like a report filter where it's kind of temporary. But with the multi-column sort, it is sticky. But it is specific to a user. So multiple users, they could have their own custom sort set up their own ways.
All right, great. And this last question here is talking about flow input validation. Can flow input validation be based on other fields on a form? Adele?
Yes, they can. So I kind of showed that earlier, but yeah, you can be in the same any field that is on the same screen, your input validation can be based off of. It can't necessarily, and any formulas and things like that will be based off that. But if it's on a different screen, if it's a previous screen, that would be fine as long as you're storing that value somewhere. But yeah, on the same screen is great as well.
All right. Well, thanks, Adele. Thanks, Dustin.
Mhm.
Doesn't look like we have any more questions out there. If you have any, feel free to put something in the chat. Otherwise, we can wrap up here. Appreciate everybody for joining. I think we got one more slide here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Masonis. I'm the Sikich account executive for the Salesforce team. We want to thank you for joining the webinar for the spring 2025 release. And also wanted to highlight that Stephanie has put a link in the chat for the our guide to transitioning from Salesforce workflow rules and process builder before the end of the support. So please go ahead and review that. For any accounts that are new to Sikich, you can reach out to me for any information about the company and our offerings. Courtney Maxwell is our client engagement manager who would handle any existing Sikich accounts. And you could also reach out to us for any of the previous webinars that we've had. So if anybody's interested in Agentforce and wasn't able to join our lunch and learn about that, you can reach out and we could share that link for that as well. And that's it. So thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.